Loud.
Okay.
All right, welcome everyone. If you're catching this as a recording, I'm Allison, and like I just told the ladies watching here, I'm a leadership coach. I'm based in Denver, Colorado, and I love working with people on kind of the personal leadership development side of being an entrepreneur, being, creative, being a healer, sharing your services. I love getting at kind of the personal empowerment side of that. So today what I have is a little presentation called Confidently in Charge, which here's a plug. That is also the name of my virtual talk show on YouTube and my podcast on all of your favorite podcast platforms. So Confidently in Charge. I just love that phrase. It's really what I want to help people live into because when we feel confident being in charge, it's a great feeling. So this will be kind of my 3-step system, some mental models I like to use really for owning your leadership without the years of experience, without the fancy title, without any of that, exactly as you are right now. You are 100% perfect and capable of being a leader. So moving forward, first things first, you are a leader. When I started calling myself a leadership coach, people were immediately like, that is not me. I am not a leader. That's like, you know, the director of the company is the leader. Like, I'm just over here doing my little thing. And so we don't like to claim that leadership title. And I think really you are a leader. And the reasons that we discredit ourselves from claiming that title of leadership uh, often might be because of one of these 5 myths that I've identified as, leadership myths that might be holding you back. So we'll just get those out of the way so that you can, if you're falling for those, you can put them to rest and say, okay, yeah, that's just a myth. That doesn't have to be real life. So we often believe leaders have to have a certain title. They have to be managers, they have to be directors, they have to be the CEO. I know for myself, when I started a business, I didn't want to call myself like a CEO at first, or I didn't feel comfortable owning that title of founder because I was like, that's not me. I'm just a little person kind of doing my own little thing. So we get caught in this mindset that leaders have to have a certain title, also thinking that leaders have to have a certain level of education, or they have to have a certain level of experience. They have to have 10 plus years in the field. Leaders have MBAs and PhDs, and I am not a leader because I don't have those things. And one of my favorite kind of twists on that is that oftentimes it is that fresh perspective that makes the difference, or the fresh perspective can just add so much to the project going forward. So sometimes the lack of experience is beneficial because it gives you room to try and experiment and not get stuck in this oh, this is the way we've always done it. This is exactly the process that I was taught. There's a little bit more room to kind of experience it as you will. We often believe too that leaders have a team of direct reports. If I'm a leader, I have to have followers. I don't know that followers and direct reports are exactly the same thing. But I see, that little thought there that leaders have followers. So I must have people who are listening to me and that I am directing. And to that, I say, you don't necessarily as you rise in leadership and become the leader over larger things, it is helpful to have, a VA or a social media person, or somebody helping with operations. It can be helpful to have direct reports. But even before that process, you are your own direct report in many ways. Starting a business and, or sharing your services, you are your own direct report. You can be your own boss. We also believe too that leaders always know what to do. Leaders have the answers. They know what to do. They've got it figured out. They're so sure of themselves. And I can say that I work with a number of clients who are leaders, and there has not been a lot of certainty in the last 8 months. There has been a lot of like shrug emoji happening of like, well, we'll see, and a lot of that going on. And so it's a lot of leadership is a lot of figuring it out and like quickly, putting yourself in positions to have those answers, whether that's talking to other people or, whatever you're employing. We believe that leaders always know what to do, but often leaders just have the tools that they need to figure out what to do. So if you don't have that answer right away, you're among great company, because leaders don't always know what to do. And then the last one I hear a lot is like, oh, I'm not good at XYZ, and so I can't be a leader. A lot of times this is like public speaking. Like, I'm not a good public speaker. I flub in front of people all the time. I can't be a leader because I can't do that. And that is, just a limiting belief that we have, that we might not have the skills that we feel we need to be like top-notch leaders, but we'll actually do an activity a little bit later on, kind of taking some time to think about like what is a leader and how can we build those skills. So just wanted to start with kind of that, like there are some leadership myths. These might be holding you back and keeping you from like identifying as the leader that you are. So we will move right along. Most of you, I think, know me. There's a couple of you who don't know me. You can obviously tell what I look like because I'm talking to you. So I included this picture that is mostly my dog because she's very cute. But I'm a certified leadership coach, like I mentioned, podcaster, talk show hostess. I'm coming to you from a psychology background and some conflict transformation as well. That's a big interest of mine. And I was always interested on like self-conflict rather than like personal like conflict between multiple people. And I, like many people, went into the corporate world because I thought that's what you're supposed to do. You graduate college, you go get a marketing job. Like that's the cycle. And so I went and I got a corporate job, and I just kind of had this feeling like that wasn't it for me and that wasn't the right path. I felt way out of alignment. So I found my way to coach training, and got certified as a life coach, decided to fall into this world of entrepreneurship, and seeing what I could do. Quickly after deciding I was going to go into like starting my own business, and being a full-time coach, we ended up moving across the country to San Francisco. And when we moved across the country to San Francisco, I was being an entrepreneur, but I wasn't doing a great job at like caring for myself. And I wasn't doing a great job at being the leader that I needed to be for myself. And so I ended up falling into a pretty intense mental health crisis and just getting like wildly depressed, feeling like all of the imposter syndrome and all of the like, I thought this is what I was supposed to do and it wasn't. And like, I'm not in alignment with myself and none of this feels right. So all of that happened. And that sort of led to me having to take a step back, taking a little time away from starting a business, to just kind of show up as a leader for myself, basically saying like, what do you need, Allison? And like, how can I support my own journey? So then I sort of accidentally became the COO of a women's wellness center startup, in San Francisco, where I like started as one position, and then suddenly, things happen and I'm in charge of all the operations. And so that was a moment where I really had to step into leadership. But throughout that whole process, I've really learned how to be the leader that Allison needs. And so what I'm going to talk about today is basically that. It's what I've built out of that. And so I see the world basically through this like integrated leadership equation of having our inward leadership and how we take care of ourselves, our outward leadership and like how we take care of the people around us who we're leading. And then once we multiply that by our mission, the equation truly takes off. So we'll do kind of deep dives into each of those, and then we'll take some action using one of my favorite tools for choosing what our action steps will be. And I also want to encourage those who are listening live to feel free to pop into the chat or anything if you've got questions or comments or things that come up along the way. As much as it feels like I'm just chatting and talking at you, I want you to feel comfortable engaging back. So the integrated leadership equation. Here we have, I see inward leadership plus our outward leadership multiplied by our mission basically equals like integrated leadership. And when we have leadership that is integrated, kind of holistic, it really like there's just so much more alignment within our life because we know, oh, wait, I'm sorry. Someone is in the waiting room. Okay, she's back. Sorry about that. That just popped up for me. Welcome back. So sorry I missed you for a moment. Welcome back to the party. We're talking about the integrated leadership equation. So once we have this inward and this outward and we multiply it by our mission, we're really set up for success to have that fully realized leadership. So inward leadership is my favorite thing to talk about. I absolutely adore this side of it. And this is really acknowledging how you show up for yourself. So I mentioned very quickly before, we moved to San Francisco and things got really bad for me. And this is actually a post I had like tried to like, get ready, get dressed, and like I was like, yeah, I'm dressed for the day. This is how I'm going to combat kind of the depression that I'm feeling. Because entrepreneurship was hard and I was doing a lot of just like struggling in that way. And it was really that moment of sitting on the couch in this like way too nice apartment that we couldn't afford in like the poshest part of San Francisco, where we were like, we cannot afford this place. I feel so out of alignment. I remember watching Parks and Rec on TV and like trying to make myself feel better and looking at Leslie Knope and just feeling so depressed because I was like, she knows what she's doing. Like she has a plan. She has direction in her life. And like, I thought I was supposed to be an entrepreneur, but like nobody is coming to my party and like this isn't working. And this whole time I thought I was on the right path and I'm actually just like failing. And so at that moment, I like in that deepest, darkest pit where my thoughts got really dark and really just uncomfortable, I had this moment of like, yo, like this isn't it for you though. There's more to do. So like I showed up for myself in that moment and just said like, okay, I'm going to be the leader that you need me to be right now. And I called my spouse and I told him to come home because like I didn't feel comfortable being at home by myself anymore. And I needed to go get like mental health assistance. So that was kind of my like extreme example of inward leadership and really like having to put my foot down and like have my back in a really big way. But other ways that it shows up is like when we acknowledge and honor our boundaries. And when we say like, okay, cool, but like I don't take meetings that late in the day, or we acknowledge like, what we need and what we're capable of. And this is, knowing that you're that much more effective if you give yourself, Fridays off in the summer or whatever it is, just honoring and protecting those boundaries for your space. It also looks like your self-care and how you're taking care of your mental state, your emotional state, your spiritual state. Like, how are you showing up for yourself in all of those different ways? And then the last one, it's something I know that Kelly talks a lot about as well, is that idea of self-trust. And like within having your own back, the element of saying like, I trust myself to figure it out. And I trust myself to be the leader that I need to be when I need to be that leader. Like, it's just that element of showing up for yourself. So I want to because I have been talking at you for a bit here, I want to kind of toss out some journal prompts. So if you have something to write on nearby, that's great. Or if you want to type, however, whatever works for you, just to help you kind of think about this inward leader. Some questions I love to ask there are like, what is a time that you stood up for yourself? And what happened? How did you feel about that? Um, you can take a screenshot of these journal prompts and I'm happy to share them after. We probably won't have time for you to, write deeply on each of them. But, whatever resonates for you most in the next, I'll give us 3 minutes. You can just jot down, things you're proud of yourself for. What are your values? Whatever of these resonate with you, go ahead and do that. And I'm going to play a little music in the background. Oops. If I can get to it. Okay, take like 25, 30 seconds to wrap up your last little thought here. Okay, marvelous. Back to, oops, got our wolves coming up, but back to our presentation. Boom, bam. Oh, the shared window is closed. Sorry, let me bring that back. Screen share. I promise it's still here. Present. Okay. Would anyone like to share anything that came up for them thinking about this idea of inward leadership? I also acknowledge that like inward things can feel very personal. So if you don't feel comfortable sharing, that is completely fine. But I do want to offer a little space if anyone has something that they'd like to share. Okay, no worries. Let's move it right along. Yeah, talking about inward leadership, it's cool. It's cool to think about, taking care of ourselves and being leaders of ourselves and in our own lives. But there's also the other side of leadership, and that is the more outward aspect of leadership. And so, how you show up for others. I included this picture here. It makes its rounds on LinkedIn every once in a while, and I don't know if you all have seen it, but I also am a big fan of wolves. Stay tuned to my Instagram on Saturday for my own little at-home Halloween wolf costume coming your way. I've gotten really good at wolf makeup, so it'll be fun. But I love wolves, and part of the reason I love wolves is because they have this really cool, like, leadership that comes up in their existence. Sorry, I just glanced at the chat and that kind of threw me for a second. But yes, I agree. Proud of yourself for saying no. Yes, that is an amazing thing to be proud of yourself for. And it's hard sometimes to say no. So when we do honor and acknowledge that boundary of like, I have to say no to this obligation, like, yes, that is 100% having your own back. But okay, so wolves with their outward leadership. Basically, what is happening in this picture is the first three wolves. In this picture, it's three, it could be however many, but this is the part of the pack that is injured or like elderly. Like they are in the very front, so they get to set the pace. And so the whole pack is dictated by kind of the struggling aspect. They're setting the pace, so they're not struggling to keep up. Next up, these are the 5 or so strongest wolves in the pack. And so they are right in front to protect the elderly and like injured wolves. And they're also keeping an eye on the front half of the main pack, which we see outside of the boxes. And then in the back, there's another 5 or so wolves that are in charge of protecting that back half. And, being in charge with the wolves in the yellow, they're kind of collectively protecting that pack. And then in the very, very back, there is kind of the alpha leader of the pack. So they have kind of vision on everything that's happening. They're not running ahead or anything. They're letting the path be dictated by, like, they're directing the path, but they're letting it be mostly dictated by the elderly, the injured, to set the speed. So there's all sorts of kind of cool things going on within like animal leadership, but wolves have a pretty cool little style setup. But other parts of outward leadership that are a little bit more likely to happen in our day-to-day life is when we're interacting with people around us. So these are clients that you're leading, a team that you're a part of, even leading, your family or your friend group to make decisions. It's really, how you're showing up for others. And so here we need to think about communication and if the words you're saying are the words they're hearing. Like, are they understanding what you mean? Are you speaking to their problems as they're happening? There's a fair bit of kind of communication that happens between you as the leader and, kind of the direct reports or your family or whoever you're dealing with. So communication is a big thing to keep in mind, as well as influence. And influence is like a tricky thing because it's hard to it's not hard to develop. Like we can all develop more influence and having an influential persona, but it's really that kind of internal confidence. And sometimes this really comes from knowing how you need to show up. So that leads into the last one, which is strategic personas. Which is really, the mindset that you put on before you go into a situation. So you're thinking like, okay, cool, I'm talking to a client, so I have like this mindset on, I'm reminding myself of like their experiences and like what's going on in that relationship, and I'm fully present in this experience with my client right now. That might be a different mindset than if you are talking to a friend of yours, or if you're talking to a vendor or somebody that you might partner with. So a great tip for outward leadership is sometimes just doing that thinking of like, who does this conversation need me to be right now? And like, how can I show up effectively as who this listener needs me to be? So this takes us to our second little activity. Oops, flying by it. Second little activity, which gets at the points of kind of what is that ideal leader? Like when you think of like, Allison is a good leader, or like, if I'm, Jackie and I'm my most actualized leadership self, like what are those skills that you have? And so just kind of jot down in a little column for yourself what some of those skills are, and then think about how you rate yourself on competency in that area, and then how you can improve your competency in that area. So I'm also happy to brainstorm this with anyone. If you're like, I don't know how to improve, my influence or whatever, I'm happy to talk about that. But take a couple minutes here. I'll give us 2 minutes to jot some of these down and think about them. Yes, definitely, Jackie. How to help others rise up to their best selves. So let me turn off the music actually. So what is the skill? Like, how do you help others rise up to their best selves? Is it through like talking to them, or is it through like setting a good example for them? You can go off mute. Yeah.
I agree and have been given the feedback from like some coaches and stuff and peers lately that like I work like too hard like for the result that I want for my clients. So how do I like pull back and allow them like as a leader to like hold the space and allow them to come like forward? And so I am struggling with like I don't know how to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so maybe
I understand it's a little bit of internal work that I need to do about like attaching to the results for them, but
super understandable. And like, yeah, it makes a ton of sense as coaches, and like especially, like I know a lot of your work is kind of into like the feminine side of sales, and like getting a little bit more like, it makes complete sense to want to feel and see benefits and solutions and all of that. So I almost see like maybe writing like the ideal leader, like leaders give people the opportunity to shine on their own, or like leaders create space for people, and then thinking about like, okay, how do I rank myself on like creating space for people right now, and how, maybe you host an activity that's just like not necessarily with an agenda, but just giving space for people to talk about what's coming up for them or something. But yeah, that's kind of my thought is like, I hear
that's
that.
helpful. Because like I like my group program, I've been doing a lot of like live teaching, and then I just decided, and I did take a poll of the group, and everybody agreed to that I'm going to record the trainings, and then we're just going to have the free space to do like free coaching. So right. I think like I'm recognizing it and seeing like how, because I was basically exhausted after doing like an hour of teaching, and then I wasn't in like the best place myself to even coach. Yeah. But I'm seeing that it's there. If I'm exhausted, they're probably also like it's too much information for like 2 hours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it sounds like a great opportunity to introduce some space into that, and then, allowing yourself to record the lessons when you're feeling, you're most vibrant and confident and like aligned and all of that. And then, yeah, presenting that to them and then having that space. I think that sounds incredible. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else have one that they're, kind of trying to think about, leaders are this, and I don't know how to be that, or I don't know how to put into words even what this leadership's kind of style is. Any other comments there?
I have something, Allison, just as an idea, just because I think it's maybe it's a tendency because I work full time with teenagers, and I am like pretty gentle in my language with them. And when I have suggestions, I'm kind of like, you could do this, this is an option, even though like really what I'm saying is like, this is what you should do. Like, this is going to help you feel better. Or like, this is going to, because I'm like a counselor. So I'll be like, message your teacher, let's set up a meeting, like I'll sit with you and do it, or do it virtually with you. But I like tend to add in this language that's more tentative for some reason, like, oh, well, what could be helpful is an email to your teacher. And I don't know what that boils down to exactly, but maybe stronger communication or more like confident communication.
Yeah, a thought I have there, and this is like a phrase that I got from my spouse, but he likes to say that like he speaks with like surgical precision, and like he says exactly what he means. And so that's something that I think about, like leaders say exactly what they mean. And so maybe challenging yourself to say like, you know, am I like wishy-washying this? Am I like, I've noticed that too, especially, you know, I'll shine light on the fact that I've been launching and sending a lot of emails to people saying like, if you want to grab time on my calendar, but realizing like, no, like that's not the most powerful language that I can mean. And that's not the most powerful language I can use. And TBH, that's not actually what I mean. What I mean is here's my link, schedule some time. And like, I want to say like, if it's aligned with you and like all of that, but I have to trust that like, if it's aligned, they'll click the link. And if it's not, then like they won't. And so like, I don't need to necessarily insert my own kind of like wishy-washiness into it, even though that is sort of like, I know that that's like a coping mechanism for myself, especially like when I feel uncomfortable. I'm like, no, but I can't like force too much. And so, yeah, maybe just thinking about like leaders say exactly what they mean, or like leaders are very confident with their messaging, or, you know, something about like that. And then thinking like, okay, you know, maybe if you're trying to think about, you know, how can you improve your competency in that area, maybe challenge yourself after you write an email to take like 15 words out of it. That's something I've done. Like I type these like long-winded emails and I say all of these like semi wishy-washy things and like leave that. But then if I reread and I'm like asking myself, like, did I actually say what I meant to say here? Like, am I saying the words that they're going to understand? And then also kind of like, can I take out some words? Can I like clarify? Yeah, just, oh my gosh. I like so
I'm
much.
just
Just like, just do it.
it's just a suggestion, or this is just something, you know.
Yeah, but leaders are confidently in charge and they know the solutions that are necessary and they present those. So yeah, anyone else have a thought or anything that came up kind of in this, what the ideal leader looks like? No. Awesome. Let's keep it going. Up next, we have the last little part of the equation, the most powerful part of the equation, because when we have some mission involved in our self-leadership and in our outward leadership, like when we have a reason for doing these things, like it's so much more powerful. It's so much more powerful. So I just want to drive home that leaders really like control what they can control. So like if you're leading something, if you're thinking about yourself as being the leader in charge, you know, you can waste a bunch of time worrying about XYZ, like, will people show up to my event that's happening in 2 weeks? What if they don't? Like, what if nobody signs up for the thing that I launch in January? Like, you could worry about all those things, but like, you can't control what's going to happen in January right now. Like, you can start thinking about like, how can I set myself up for a successful January? Like, what can I do? Atomic habits, like moving toward your goals. But like leaders, in terms of your mission, like try not to get super wrapped up in a mission that doesn't, like, that you don't have control over. Also realizing that leaders tend to respond rather than react. And so having awareness of sorry, I have to close this so I can see the time. Okay, perfect. Having awareness of like what you need to do and having awareness of your self-leadership and who you are inwardly and outwardly, it can help you choose how you want to respond to something. So you might have your initial like knee-jerk reaction to something that occurs. Cool, like that happens, but you can then choose to respond like, is this how I want to react to this situation? And leaders kind of do that process. You know, you don't have to stick with what your like initial reaction is, you can choose like, okay, what am I going to do coming forward from this? And then leaders figure it out. So like, if you don't know what your mission is right away, like who can you talk to? Who can you ask to help you figure out like, how to focus your attention? So that's a little bit on kind of the mission multiplier aspect. And I have a little activity here because the mission aspect is really all about taking action. And so think about an intention that you have for who you want to be as the leader of yourself. So that might look like setting clearer boundaries, or it might look like, my intention is to build my self-awareness by taking time to meditate every day or something like that. And then, you connect your action to what that intention is. And then, of course, setting a deadline for yourself of when, it's an ongoing process, of course, but setting a deadline for yourself of when you want to take this action by, or how you want to plug it into your schedule is very helpful. So I will give us another 3 minutes to drop your inward leadership intention, your outward leadership intention, actions you can take, and deadlines. So of course I'm here as well. If anybody wants to brainstorm or chat, let me know. Otherwise, let's take a few moments. Okay, another 30 seconds or so, thinking about intention of how you want to show up, action that you can take connected to that, and when you want to kind of challenge yourself to try taking this action. Not to try taking this action, I'm using that wishy-washy language. When you want to put the deadline down to take this action. Floating above imposter syndrome as an intention. Yeah, I think that's a great intention. Overcoming imposter syndrome as it comes up, for sure. What is an action that you can take, or is that your question? Like, what action should I take? Yeah, so actions for imposter syndrome. So there, I would maybe, this is something that I too have been dealing with, and I was just talking about today that like, I feel like imposter syndrome changes as I come to different situations. Like I just have to learn to deal with it rather than trying to like beat it. But let's see. So an action that I might take for floating above imposter syndrome is maybe doing something like writing down some wins that I've had, and keeping track of like, okay, yeah, I did these 10 things that I'm super proud of, or and then having that to, reflect on. So that might be an action that I would take. Or imposter syndrome. I'm also curious because I know some other people in this group too might have great suggestions for ways to like kind of take action to overcome imposter syndrome. So if anyone else has anything, feel free to unmute and pop in. But other actions for overcoming imposter syndrome. I like to go for testimonials there too. Like, normalizing it too. Like just acknowledging like, hey, this happens. And yeah, even Brene Brown has it. And like, she's amazing. And like, seems like the top dog leader. Like, holy cow, she does dare to lead. Like she's the leadership person. And so, yeah, even acknowledging that like, it's the thing that happens. So, normalizing it might be talking about it. So that could be an action, is just like not hiding from it. You know, you don't have to talk about it publicly if that doesn't feel comfortable, but even just talking about it with a friend or somebody and just like naming it as having occurred or as like occurring within you now can be an action to take. Does that resonate? I see a smile, so cool, we're good. Anyone else? Yeah, put it all around. That was in my most recent episode where I talked to Lexi Smith from the PR bar, and she like showed me her office, and it's just like press win, press win, press win. Like if she looks up from her desk, she sees like her Client and People magazine. And like if she looks to the left, she sees like a Vogue cover, and like she's just like surrounded by these wins because like that's a part of entrepreneurship too, is like when we're in a company we have that external validation of like someone is willing to pay me a salary, someone is willing to like, you know, celebrate my wins for me, like people are paying attention to what I'm doing. And like as working for ourselves or being kind of a solo show, it can, you know, we don't always take the time to do that and think about that. So love that. Surround your space completely with it. So great. Awesome. Well, I will click us forward. So that is kind of wrapping a little bit of what I have. I realize we still have some time here too. So I'm super happy to kind of converse even more about leadership and leaving some time for Q&A and just to chat. But we've talked about the idea of inward leadership and really like, how can you take care of yourself and how can you have your own back? The idea of outward leadership, like how can you strategically show up? How can you be really precise with your language? How can you have influence in front of a room full of people? Like how can you trust yourself? You know, all of that kind of plays into that inward and outward, and then connecting it to your mission and knowing where you're going, what you're doing, how you want to show up, what you're working toward. All of that can really just amplify that leadership. And then attaching that to an action and a deadline, because that's a great way to, you know, move forward and not keep yourself just in that stagnant place. So I will pause here for a little Q&A. If anybody has questions that they want to share or comments or anything like that. I'm trying to get my screen back. There we go. No. Okay, well, I'll just tell you about what's next if you want to keep interacting with me. I'm not going to present this again because it's driving me bonkers trying to present in Canva. I'm managing it. But basically, like I said, I am in kind of a launch mode right now. And so I am launching the Self-Leadership Sanctuary, which is my group program. And so we start with the Energy Leadership Index, which is a leadership assessment that I'm certified in. And that gives us a really clear kind of research-backed, data-driven approach to who you are as a leader and what some of your skills are. So things that might show up is like being a really heart-centered leader who is really compassionate and thinks about others. Or maybe you are a leader who's really opportunistic and you're really great at like analyzing a situation and seeing the opportunities. Or you might have a lot of like competitive leadership energy and like wanting to win and wanting to kind of like be the best and all of that. So there's these different ways that you can show up. So we get a clear image of that at the beginning, and then we go into group sessions talking about things like values, how we motivate ourselves, limiting beliefs about who we are as leaders. And then within each week session, there is guided meditation and journal prompts that I've included to kind of go through that process with people. So that's that. But I also have my virtual talk show and podcast, pretty active on Instagram, and love talking about leadership there. So I've included my information if you have questions or comments or anything you want to share. Otherwise, I'll open the floor back up and I will stop my share. Yeah. How we feeling?
That was so good, Allison.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, I was like trying to see a clock and like I just let my notes go. I was like, I had notes, but I don't know how to also see them at the same time. So
Yeah, the
knows?
Canva presentation, I did it once and it like took the whole screen and then I was like, where are my people? And like it was like back and forth. That's exactly what just happened. Which I think you handled really well. But like what I found was a good solution is like still design it in Canva, or you have the presentation in Canva, just convert it to a PDF and then next time like share screen to the PDF and then you'll be able to see the chat and us and all that. But that I learned that lesson too.
Yes, that is a great tip. That is
Pro tip.
Perfect. Because I used to always do like Google Slides, but I just for whatever reason was like, I want to make this one in Canva. And so I did it in Canva and I'm now like, how do I scroll around? Leadership lessons we all learn. All right. Well, anything else? Or Kelly, do you have closing comments or anything? Or I'm happy to stay on too for the next bit if anybody else has leadership questions or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, that was amazing. You're amazing. Thank you for coming and sharing your knowledge with us. I appreciate you. This was great. And everyone should definitely go watch your talk show, listen to your talk show.
If my like obnoxious energy has not tired you out already. My mom says that to me all the time. She's like, I watch you do stuff and you're just like, I get so tired watching you because you're just like all over. And like, it's how I keep going. I don't know. Like, it's dark in this room and my ring light's making me look weird. So like, I'm just going to move and like keep it going.
No, I love it. I love it. And I appreciate you. And I'm so grateful for you and grateful for you guys for showing up. So thank you guys. This was great. And hopefully everyone will continue to connect with Allison. We also have our meeting, Morning Magic Collective meeting next week. And then our next event after that is with Katie, and it's going to be all about journaling for wellness. So if you're interested, you can always find that on my website. But yeah, thank you so much, Allison. This was great.
I did it again. Everybody, you get 6 minutes back in your day. If you don't have anything for the next little bit, go get yourself some water, do your 11s. I'm going to go learn about tapping. It's great.
Yeah, take a breath.
Take a breath. Thank you all so much for joining, though. We'll see you later.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.